Good evening. I would like to start with a thank you to Vasilios Barchokas for this kind invitation. Vasilios from Archisearch and Design Ambassador. Thank you also to Zomokos for organizing this inspiring event. So, yes, we would obviously like to come to Greece and build a nice resort on one of your islands, as you might love to come to Switzerland and build a nice resort in our mountains. Today, I'm not going to talk about that kind of projects, but I would like to show you how we approach the very eminent question of building on the build. So how do we deal with all the legacy from former generations, all those industrial areas, those harbors, those rundown neighborhoods? So how can we find a strategy to make out of those sites a nice and specific new project? Who we are, Herzog and Meuron, architectural practice, founded 40 years ago. We are roughly 600 people, with our main office headquarters in Basel and a few other offices all over the globe. We are working globally. We are working on very small projects, very big projects, any kind of typology, hospitals, schools, houses, any kind of things. You might have seen a few of our projects in the past. There is, for instance, the Bird's Nest, the Stadium of Beijing, we've realized already a few years ago. And yeah, I would just say what is specific to our company is that we develop a project always in dialogue, and we would like to be involved from the start to the end and in all aspects of a project. People working together with us, they can also take profit of, I would say, 40 years of experience, which is like stored in a brain in our storage. Here you see a few models of projects. And yeah, in those 40 years, we have been working on 650 projects. And we would love to do many, many more. But now, back to the topic, build on the build. I have brought quite a few images. There were many words during the day, many numbers. I will focus on images and basically quickly show you 8 projects where we had to find a strategy how to deal with the existing and how to activate potentials. You might know the Tate Modern, so that's the biggest museum for contemporary art in London. A competition, we had one around 20 years ago, and it was about the transformation of this Bankside power station. A marvelous place, very romantic, but all that should be converted into a museum for art. Obviously, we had to preserve the building, and we had to install galleries, many galleries, a lot of galleries, because, as I said, it's one of the biggest museums in the world. And I would say the key feature of our proposal was not to fill up the entire building, but to basically fill up 2 sides with galleries and leave the center empty. And you can see here under the construction, so we just took out the machines, slightly refurbished that big turbine hall, and converted that turbine hall in an urban plaza, in a street, in a place, in an open place, so people would gather, come, you can walk in on one side, walk out on the other side. And as a side effect, we would also create the biggest art gallery in the world, so that turbine hall is being used as an art gallery. And as you can see, it became just like through the fact that we did not fill something, but we kept the void. It became a very emblematic feature. Another project recently finished in New York, the Powerhouse Arts. A similar situation, again a powerhouse consisting of 2 buildings. And again, very romantic, the machines and all that stuff that had gone, but nowadays only half of it was left over. So obviously we would not demolish that, but we would have to find a strategy to reinforce it. What could you do? You take that hall and you reconstruct the missing piece. And that was the main idea of the project. So we literally took the old volumetry, slightly adjusted it, we rebuilt it, not with red brick, but red concrete, and that's the project. So from a leftover, from a piece that you see and you think something is missing, this has turned into a whole thing again. We would then fill up this volume with a grid, because yes, we need area. We would fill up that grid with all the technical equipment, because you need air, you need water, you need all that stuff. And we created just like a spatial framework. You could freely then fill in galleries, event spaces, offices, and workshops. Here an image of a workshop in the old factory and one in the new factory. Plus then obviously we left the big hall for special events. A similar project, again a power station in Madrid. Again, it was a competition. As you can see on the right side, that's the Paseo del Prado, so one of the main axes in Spain. And then, let's say, the old city starts on the left-hand side, very dense, no space for like being on the street, so very, very dense. And our proposal was, let's just kind of free that area up. It was a listed building, we could not demolish it, but we could cut the entire ground floor. So we created a covered plaza by chopping off the ground floor, and instead of building in front or beside, we added a top piece and an underground piece. So, as I said, you would literally just chop off that building, you lift it, you create that flying piece of heritage, this plaza that connects to the Paseo, that would kind of allow people to flow through the entire neighborhood. You would enter, you would discover the entrance to the building, climb up the stairs, discover the galleries, climb up further, go on the roof with a cafe and a nice view on the city. And, as I said, we really created urban space and not only a building. You probably have seen, or maybe even visited, the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg. There was a building. That building was demolished. When we started, there was this building. It was a storage building for coffee beans in the harbor of Hamburg. It was also listed, and we were asked to build a hotel and a Philharmonie. So what could you do? You could build a hotel tower in front and a harmony on top, and maybe the parking in the existing blue piece. You could kind of start melting that, or you put everything on top. This is what we did. So we just kept that massive existing structure, accommodated it for parking, created an intermediate level on that top of the existing structure for an urban plaza, a public plaza, so that place is, again, publicly accessible without tickets and anything. And then on top, we just put it the Philharmonie surrounded by a hotel. The result, you see quite a little translation from the sketch. And you also get, again, this effect of this tower, the clock tower, the main feature of the harbor that would receive you when arriving to that place. Meanwhile, it has become one of the landmarks of Hamburg. You can see how it prominently sits there in the harbor. A section, parking, hotel around, Philharmonie in the center, public plaza in the middle. You would approach that building, you would sneak in there to that slot on the left side, you would take a curved elevator that leads you up to that urban plaza with a marvelous view on the city, on the harbor. You would turn back again, take the stairs, and then ultimately end up in this Philharmonic hall. So again, let's say there is an existing building, there is a new part, and together they make a new something, a new entity. And important, we also get that, let's say, public dimension into that building as in the others. A very, very different project, the new headquarters for the BBVA Bank in Madrid. When we were asked to make a proposal, the site in the center was already partially built. So the question was, shall we demolish everything and start from scratch? And the answer was, no, we should not. So there were massive structures, they were stable, that was material, labor. It was never finished when the bank bought it. But we just suggested to the bank, let's keep it, the existing. Let's just cut out a few pieces. Let's do then additions, fill-ins, and then let's take that pattern and just like roll it over the entire site. And in the center, we would create a plaza. That's the result. So this is the headquarters where between 6,000 and 7,000 people work every day. It is also in the outskirts of Madrid. Before BBOA had nice places in the city. So it was also about creating a place, creating like a small city you would like to go to work and to spend times. And here from the process, so the existing structures and the cutout and the finished building with the fill-ins. So we created kind of like a small city with streets, with plazas. There are gardens, some stepped, with trees, with olive trees. And all those streets would ultimately lead to that central plaza with those passerellas around. And within that plaza, the main building of that headquarters would raise, which is kind of like you would take that piece in the floor, tilt it 90 degrees, and there it is standing. Another smaller project is the refurbishment of the campus of the insurance company Helvetia, Swiss insurance company. We were approached. They have that site with the white outline and this ugly tower, and they wanted to have something which represents them. So for them it was clear we should demolish that tower and make something big. We said, this tower, yes, it is ugly, but shall we really demolish it? Or could our strategy be you do another ugly tower, and having two ugly towers might end up in having something nice? And that was the solution. So by duplicating that tower, it became a campus. You created a center. You knew where to enter. You had that middle area, so you enter between two towers. And what always works, we just added a few flying roofs with penthouse on all their buildings to create an identity. Very simple here under construction. So the right one is the new tower, the left the existing, which we then also obviously refurbished. We gave it a new appearance with this glass tile facade, which obviously also refreshes a bit the expression. The auditorium or main lobby between the towers, you would approach that. It looks like a bit a Greek temple, maybe missing a bit of order. Flying this roof, held by the columns, you would enter, go up into that auditorium, or continue your way up in the towers, where you end up in those penthouses. And also here, we could convince the company that those penthouses would be public, so you can access that place. And it is a bar open 365 days a year, with amazing views over the city of Basel. And then we obviously wanted to do also something, let's say, a bit more specific than only a penthouse. And we approached James Turrell, you might know, the artist, the American artist, doing all those light installations. We could gain him. He came to Basel. He liked those roofs, and he put it two light installations on those two towers. Here you see him with his cell phone programming this light choreography. And also in a cityscape, you would have now two towers that dialogue with each other. One is blue, the other is red, the next is green. And even if you're inside the bar, your Martini Rosso will look more rosso or even blue. A very, very different project for the fashion brand Uniqlo in Tokyo. They had that existing building. It was also the question, is that a nice building? Shall we not demolish it? It didn't look very appealing from the outside, nor did it from the inside. So it was a shopping center. But when we started analyzing the building, we just found out that that building is basically structure. So it's all over with beams and columns and stuff. So, I mean, that's really the model of the existing structure. And it was very clear, you would not demolish such a thing. I mean, it's just beautiful, it is specific. But you should maybe not clad it again with plasterboard and woods and whatever, but reveal this poetry, this power of that building. That's what we did. So we stripped everything out. It already looks quite nice, those bones, this mass and those forces. As you can see, we chopped off in the middle a few floor plates and basically created, losing a bit of selling surface, but created that atrium that runs out through the entire building. So you look down, you look up, on the ceiling even a mirror to make that more amazing. And without also spending a lot of money in new finishes, you just take that power and you play it out. In the outside, we could then also kind of give a glance of what people would expect inside. I've already come to the last project. So as I said, we work on big projects and small projects, on all kinds of projects. So don't be afraid, we do not only do refurbishment of old power stations, we also do a lot of hotel projects. That's, I think, a very nice and cute one. So it's the Mandarin Oriental on the Lake Como. It exists, and we were commissioned to refurbish it. You see the main palace and then all those residences surrounding them, the pool, the floating pool, and you must imagine below all that lower garden, you have a spa. That's what we see here. So in the center, you have the old villa, the basement of the old villa, and then you would have just like a spa world sprawling out all below that building. This world was quite awkward. It was like a basement because it is a basement, so you would have windows that are high up and that make you feel you're below earth. It's not so nice. A small trick, you just like cover those windows with another window, put a few plants in and a few curtains, you enter into that space and you would think you're on the ground floor. So a very small transformation. You would then continue to the dry spa. The idea of those architects was that you have a center in that dry spa from where you then go to all those small rooms, but that center looked more like in a submarine or spaceship. So our proposal was, let's just make a hole in the ceiling and let's have a central courtyard like Mandarin Oriental in a Japanese small house. So at a sudden, all those functions, all those rooms would face this little courtyard. Then we had the wet spa. Also there was a pool, all was enclosed. At the end, they had that like cinema to kind of visually open that space a bit up, but it was rather sad. So what we did, you can see it on the right side, if you're adjacent to the lake, just make a hole in the wall to the lake and bring the lake in and create that relation. Then a new cladding, but as you can see, all the pool, all that stuff, we just took it and refurbished it. The window then also leading to the outside, where when starting we had that food and beverage area. It had a glass floor, quite spectacular, but on the other hand it was totally disconnected from the lake. So we would just convert that in an open space. So that bar is also in winter flat. All the fridges and stuff, we have them on 60 centimeters, so water come in without demolishing the bar. And it became quite a pleasant space. And to finish, there was also this floating pool, but when you were in the floating pool, you did not really have the feeling that you are in a floating pool. So what we did, we just substituted it with a floating pool with affinity edge. And that has become the longest floating pool worldwide ever built. It's 40 meters. And you would just sit there on the lounger or go into the water and feel like you would be in the lake. So summarizing, let's just have a look on what we find. Let's try to reveal those qualities and let's try to activate those potentials. And often you will end up with something much more surprising than starting from scratch. Thank you.